everyone, that's Titus and I'm Thomas, and this is Everyone is Bad at Magic, where we untap, upkeep, and punt. So, Titus and I had a pretty unique opportunity this past weekend where we got to go out and record with the MTG Basics crew. It was a pretty fun experience. They brought us out to their headquarters and showed us their production, which I thought was really cool, especially since we've just started this little content project of ours. And we played, what, three, four games? How many did you get in, Titus?
Believe it was around three.
Cool. I got to play my favorite deck Heavy a couple of times. Did not do well. I got stomped in every game, but I think you had a little bit better of a showing. Would you mind telling us a bit about that?
In one of our games, yeah. So playing Tim the Jessica, uh, there was an opportunity to cast a Peer into the Abyss. One of the reasons why I kind of like Mardu, I mean, you get the same opportunity with Grixis. That's why I think Rogsai is a very popular deck for CDH players, is just because of the explosivity of mana. But uh, I played one of my bad cards, which I think is Crystal Vein, the one that you can sacrifice. And I was making sure to be able to correctly count. So I had a Cabal Ritual and Peer into the Abyss in my hand. I was going to go for it, whether it got stopped or not. That's what you do in Marty, right? YOLO.
Yeah, you just keep pushing.
Exactly. And I was like, okay, how do I get more cards into my graveyard to get enough mana? So with like a Simian Spirit Guide, having the colorless from the Crystal Vein to be able to sacrifice that, casting an Abrade just to get rid of something to get it into the bin, being able to cast the Cabal Ritual into a Peer into the Abyss, and then, you hope you get your fast mana because theoretically you should be running enough like rocks or rituals to be able to just do something. And if you don't get it, you don't get it. Oh well, we move on with our day. But that's
Well,
fine.
you're being a little modest. You did create that window for yourself. I believe there's a fish on the board at the end step before yours.
Yeah, giving opponents too many cards to be able to stop you is kind of a problem. It's not a guarantee they'll draw something, but again, I had to fill my bin, and having a March of Otherworldly Light, I think that card is very good, especially when you're in this color pie. Um, Again, adds to the bin, keeps players off of interaction, and yeah, open up an opportunity. But sometimes it works out for people and sometimes it doesn't. Just gotta try. I think that's the main aspect, is like, don't be afraid to fail. If I failed, then I'm like, all right, hopefully I can draw some more cards and get back into the game.
Yeah, we also played a pretty good game against Jonah with our buddy Josh, who was on. Oh, what was he playing during that game? It was inconsequential, but Jonah was on Blue Farm, and normally I don't have the most interesting things to say about Blue Farm, but he was playing Treasure Napper, and that card is awesome. I am so happy anytime I see it drop onto board. For those who don't know, it's two colorless and a red. Anytime your opponent taps a permanent, non-land permanent for mana, you gain control of it until the end your end step. So by the time it got back to them, they untapped with I think like seven additional rocks. Then it's just the typical T and K play of putting your Grand Abolisher off of a Cavern of Souls. Not too much crazy about that, but I do love seeing a niche card in a good deck perform well.
Fair enough. And that was a pretty good card. I think that's a good card, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is a good card. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about EDHrec Salty Card List. They've put out a new one for 2025, 2026. I'm not entirely certain what the cadence is on that, but it came out in October, so we're rolling with it. The way that these salty cards are determined on the site is that they put out somewhat of a poll type situation ahead of time where you can go on to EDHrec. They'll show you a card and you can basically vote on how salty it makes you. So, after the salty cards are determined, they publish a list that we can go through and kind of look at. So, Titus, do you think that salty cards are more of a commander problem, or is that something that we would also potentially see in 60 card as well?
I think we can see it in 60 card. Look at the state of standard until we get the ban with VV and Cauldron. But outside of that, right, I just think there's cards or strategies that people are not quite a fan of, is what it really comes down to.
Are you saying that you wouldn't be thrilled if somebody played a Orm's Chantlock with a Isochron Scepter against you?
If I did not have a way to remove it, I think I would probably look to go to the next game, depending on the board state and what I could possibly draw. Yeah, I think it'd be a little frustrating.
I think that that's pretty fair. So today we want to put a little bit of an emphasis on going over the top 10 saltiest cards that they put out on their list and kind of get a little bit of a thought process of what we think of each of those cards. So, first card we want to talk to you about today was Stasis, which is one in a blue for an enchantment. Players do not get an untap phase, pay a blue during their upkeep, or Stasis is destroyed. Now, I know that this card used to be a Dereve staple, especially in CDH. I don't believe it's seeing much play these days, but would this make you salty, Titus?
Uh, Possibly. This one feels more game dependent. Like, we could look at this from a CDH perspective and say, "Aw, man," but there's enough free interaction that maybe you're running something that could get rid of it, right? Now, in a casual, I don't know. I haven't really come across it. I don't know how easy it would be to remove this because you don't get an untap phase, but you can still play a land. And in casual, you should be running like how many lands? 36 to 39?
Not including rocks. Yeah, that sounds about right to me.
But how much removal are they running? Will they get rid of it? And then this will be a later topic, but can the player who's playing it, is this just the funny little haha card or are they building around it?
Oh, 100%.
And can they recur it?
Ooh, that's a nasty proposition. And single card removal is not at a premium in Casual Commander, like you said. It's not like you just have a into Flood Maw that you can tutor for or draw into, especially if you're not running a card like Ristic Study. Some foreshadowing there. Um, but I think this would make me very salty if I sat down at a Commander game. I might just say I didn't really want to play that game out at that point. All right. I think next up is Winter Orb. As long as Winter Orb is untapped, players can untap more than one land during their untap steps. Can you think of any decks that might play this deck card, Titus? Because I have one.
Yeah, yeah. Urza, Lord Chief High Artificer.
I have a weirder one. Maria, Scholar of Antiquities. It's a Gruul commander. So not that mono white strategy that we're used to, but I'll see if I can pull up that card if you have any thoughts on Winter Orb.
Well, I do while you're looking. There is also the blue-red Strixhaven Dragon.
Oh, well, that's another card I can I don't know. But Marius Color of Antiquities is one in Gruul. Tap target or tap an untapped non-token artifact you control to add a green. Tap two untapped non-token artifacts, exile the top card of your library you may pay at this turn. So essentially, you can take a Winter Orb effect and just kind of ignore it entirely. So it is very gross. And you can pretty much lock your opponents out on turn two.
But that's also to say the players might be making it so it's not symmetrical.
It is not symmetrical at all in Maria.
I think it becomes a little bit more fair, right? It just slows the game down if it's a symmetrical effect. But again, they're building around it, right? That's the main thing, and it probably indicates how that game may go. Realistically, though, if you look at this card, it's not super horrible if you're playing dorks. Sure, you need to be able to get the mana out to be able to cast rocks, which casually that might be a little bit more difficult. Might be. But for dorks, like you're throwing down one drops, those, and then they can chain in other ones. But then again, what is the build around this card?
I mean, you're not necessarily wrong outside of the few commanders that can build around this, but I think that if this was a purely symmetrical stacks piece versus non-symmetrical, that would actually make it worse because then you have to sit there for 15 turns while the idiot who played it is trying to figure out what they're doing with their life and can't kill the table. That sounds like a more miserable experience to me than you playing this and winning a turn later.
Look, they're just trying to prepare for an extended conversation by keeping the other players at the table with them.
Forced friends, who doesn't love it? All right. You might want to close your eyes at this one, Titus. Our next card is Vivi Orniter. For one and is it? Pay 0 to add X mana in any combination of red or blue, where X is Vivi Orniter's power. Activate only during your turn and only once each turn. Whenever you cast a creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Vivi, and it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Why, oh, why would this ever be number 3 on our list here?
I think people are just traumatized from standard that it's they're feeling the effects in other formats, right? That's the reason.
I I think this is a miserable play pattern for casual. Anytime you have a storm deck, that is not fun to play against if you don't have a clean pilot. I don't think that this card is overly powerful. I think people don't like 20-minute turns.
Fair enough. But what I will say, take a look at this versus something like Bergie or Electro or Urabrask. Uh, a storm effect that might have more effects, or even like Joyra, the blue-red one where you cast historic spells and you draw cards. Yeah, this could be built within a storm manner, but you get a lot of mana. You're probably taking more explosive, not like I'm chaining action after action, which you still can do with this, right? Not, don't get me wrong, but you're going to have a more explosive effect. So maybe just from the game ending quicker might be another reason, or feeling like players can't really do anything in regards to it. However, what I will say, right, I think it's more of a recency effect that it's just very popular right now, and there are a lot of players that are interested in it, so people might just be sick of seeing it.
I'm not going to disagree with you on that. And we have had many conversations about Nadu taking up this slot in last year's list, and neither of us believe that Nadu is the same as Vivi. Yeah, I miss Nadu more than you do. I had that deck in paper. We think Nadu is more akin to, or I think Nadu is closer to Raw Monsoon Mage in play patterns and power versus Vivi just being probably an unfun play experience for people who are trying to build it as a 2 or bracket 3 deck. Anything else you got on that one?
Not it was way worse than VB.
There's nothing wrong with Nadu other than it was being played poorly in bad pods.
Hashtag bring
Nadu's,
it back. Bring it back. Yeah.
yeah,
Back, yeah.
let's have it as a game changer.
Sure.
Yeah, CDH pods only. I would love Nadu back, but that's not what this is about today. Up next, we got Tergrid, God of Fright. 3 double black. Whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from the graveyard onto your battlefield under your control. There is a backside. You will not play it. Everyone hates this card. Yeah, this is a casual boogeyman. It has been for many, many years. Essentially, if you have any way of destroying your opponent's creatures, rocks, lands, doesn't really matter. You get it. Um, I know that Hire is a big fan of this card for a little bit of CDH action, but man, I know that this gets people really unhappy when they see it at a table.
Well, in it has two effects that the card wants you to do that people don't like. Sacrifice your permanents and discard cards. Nobody's a fan of having their cards discarded.
Yeah, except for some reason people love Kefka. I guess not playing against, playing it, huh?
It's true. I
All
don't. Kefka may not be as bad as Tergrid. Just, but I think Tergrid just strips resources way harder, more than likely. I haven't really played against one, but the effect, it's not something that I'd be unfamiliar with. I think the fact that you're just stripping players' resources, and depending on how you're leveraging that, if you're not leveraging it in a way where you're ending the game and you're just like, all right, enjoy that one card. Oh, it's gone.
I think that this gets played a lot with things like Braids, Arisen Nightmare, cards that make you sacrifice something on an end step, or Tiny Bones, where you're being forced to discard a card so that you're able to recur those when your opponents are not able to use those resources. I have not built the deck. I'm not intending to. That's just my guess in that direction. All right. Well, I don't really have much more on that. So our next card is a bit of a personal favorite and a card that I wouldn't be too sad to see go either. Rhystic Study for 2 and a blue. It's an enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless that player plays one. I think that there's nothing wrong with this card in bracket 3, bracket 4 decks, and even in CDH when the meta is normal. But when we get to mid range hell and you have those super high resource games, and for those who don't know, a high resource game is typically when there are 3 to 4 copies of Rhystic Study on the board, with maybe a couple players who have multiple copies of Rhystic Study from different copy effects, maybe a Smothering Tithe or two to keep that mana flowing, and time gets called on a tournament round, and that last turn takes 30 to 40 minutes while everybody tries to go for it, and every game action has 7 or 8 triggers. That is when Rhystic Study ceases being a cool little puzzle to figure out when you can afford the one, when you shouldn't advance your game plan, and turns into we're gonna be here for a while.
Yeah, it it's a card that warps games, right? Like at least from a CDH perspective, casually, perhaps. I think the frustrating thing, right, is like say we can show restraint or responsibility, but what about the other players we're sitting with? And it's like, I did all this self-discipline just for people to just feed the living daylights out of it
Do you pay the one?
on occasion.
Yeah, I very rarely pay the one.
I think it's circumstantial, right? It's definitely circumstantial, but I will. There's not if there's no reason to give somebody a card, why am I giving them a free card? And if I'm able to not hinder what I'm doing, or if it's really important to not get them a card, but there's a card not on the higher portion of this tier list for salt scores that makes this miserable to play against.
Go ahead, tell them what it is.
It's Orcish Bowmasters. Like casually, I could see that. Yeah, that card's not bad casually, but like from a CDH perspective, if you're playing a certain strategy, it's like, all right, well there goes my board.
We're gonna dive into that in pretty big. We're gonna go off the DOBM a little bit later. Um, our next card is the Tabernacle of Pendrell Vale. It's a legendary land. All creatures now require an upkeep cost of 1 in addition to any other upkeep costs that they may have. If the upkeep cost for creature is not paid, the creature is destroyed. I've never seen this in a game. Um, do you have a guess on why this is high up on this list, Titus? Because I think I have an inkling on why this is here.
This card is very annoying. I do not like it.
Oh, okay.
So I have played against this card, and this card is manageable. You could even get a benefit from the effect by, say, you want your creature to die, whether you have some sort of static effect or reanimator strategy. However, and while I have played it against CDH, Slicer, and other random stacks decks, it adds another layer that you have to play around, which I don't think people very much enjoy. But they start compounding on that. And then that's when you kind of get stripped again, resource denial. And you're put into this position where it's like, all right, please end the game because what are my outs here within this? Uh, Realistically, though, looking at this card, it really comes down to what is the 99? What is the 98? Because by itself, it's like, oh, it's, another small effect. But it's like, all right, now we have a winter orb. Really? Really? It's the added effect.
Okay, that you went off on that. I looked at this card. It's like, yeah, that's not that bad. Oh, it costs $3,500. That's why it's here. Okay, no, you have feelings and they're strong ones. I can respect that.
Yeah, I'm glad it's $35. I don't want to see this more.
You heard it here. Titus likes reserve list. Um, hot take. Our next call is Armageddon for three and a white. Destroy all lands. Eh, I don't think land should be sacred. That's it. That is the end of my take there.
Agreed. Have you played against an Armageddon effect?
I have played against an Armageddon effect. I think it's very cool. I also think it's pretty telegraphed when it's coming out. So if as long as you see it coming, it's kind of your fault if you don't deal with it. Maybe that's just like the most unhinged take, but meh.
Right. Well, I think the other thing is too, if you play with a play group, you kind of know what cards people run, and you may form your own meta if you're not playing at an event. When you're playing with random players, a card like this might take you more by surprise, and that might be where we're gauging the social rules, the bracket system, stuff like that. I don't think like a one-time Armageddon effect is realistically that bad, especially like the same conversation. What are your resources already on the board? It's just destroying your lands. Do you have dorks? Do you have rocks? I think a lot of these cards, they can be singularly salty, but I think it's when you add in what are they included with? It does seem like, I was thinking about it, the Necro Bloom, right? Or Blossom, Necro Blossom, Necro Bloom.
And Necrobloom.
Yeah, you have an effect that lets you play lands from the graveyard. You're off to the races, right? Raminep, Excavator, Crucible of Worlds, Walking Closet.
I Still Explorer is broken. That card is so good. You can Armageddon all day if you have an Ice Till and a Spring Bloom or Summer Bloom. Summer Bloom. Just play three lands from your graveyard right after this. You're right back in it. Um, maybe that's yeah. Maybe it's not a good take, but yeah, I'm not too worried about land destruction personally. So each their own. Shall we move on to our next card?
Yeah.
All right, we got Static Orb next, which is a 3 generic artifact. The Static Orb is untapped. Players can't untap more than 2 permanents during their untap step. So while Winter Orb is more than 1 land, this is 2 permanents. And though this is lower down on the list, I think this is way more backbreaking and way more crushing than Winter Orb. Because this hits your dorks and your rocks as well. Um, Same commanders break this. Urza, Maria, uh, whatever hell you mentioned earlier. But any game I've resolved a static orb in, it's like give it 2 seconds and you can watch the light just drain from your opponent's faces as their just will to play the game leaves. I like saying no with counter spells. Hard stacks like this makes me feel like a bad person. I took that deck apart. What are your thoughts?
I'm in agreement with you. We're kind of seeing like a similar thing here. It's limiting the game, which you could look at as a puzzle, right? What can I get away with untapping? What's in my deck construction? But overall, when you get into these slower games, into this resource denial, how fast are they? How fast is your opponent going to win? And I think we're relatively being a little more, maybe for humorous purposes, negative on these cards. And realistically, they can be fun to play against. But I think it just falls into the same category. It's just it slows things down and kind of puts you in a bit of a bind.
Yeah, I think that's a good take. Realistically, I personally like playing faster games. I want a game to take 30 turns in 4 hours, so anything that slows down the game to a crawl and you can't break parity on, I am looking for. I probably will be a little bit salty about. I hate board wipe tribal for exactly that reason. Um, so next card is going to be Vorniclex Voice of Hunger, which is 6 and 2 green for a legendary creature praetor. That is trample. Whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana to your mana pool for any type that land produced. Whenever an opponent taps a land for mana, that land doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step, and it's a 7/6. This is just more resource denial, but for 8 mana, that does not feel like you should be winning the game for 8 mana.
Could be part of a big creature strategy like Kona Rescue BC or Kinnan Bonder Prodigy, where you're cheating it in somehow. Just big green mana because it also it doubles your mana, right?
It does double your mana as well,
Whenever you tap a land.
specifically just for lands, though.
Yeah. I think this one is okay. And it might be in a lands deck. But overall, I think this is one of the easier cards to interact with. It's a creature. And there's another channel that made a valid point, Trinket Mage, on just this card's easier to deal with.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not too worried about this. I don't think this is as powerful as like a Void Winnower or a Hellbreaker Horror, which are both creatures I would much less rather my opponent to have, or even a Jim Gitaxis. Choose which one. I think both of them are worse. Um, Final card on our list here is good old Thassa's Oracle, which has 2 blue pips. It's a creature merfolk wizard. When Thassa's Oracle enters the battlefield, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is your devotion to blue. Put one of them on top of your library and the rest on the bottom in a random order. If X is greater or equal to the number of cards in your library, you win the game. Don't play this in bracket 4 and under decks. This should not be in your games. This is not for casual players. Leave this to CDH players. That's what this card is for for power formats. There's nothing wrong with this card existing. It is a clean way to win a game. That's what it's for. That said, I do not run Thassa's Oracle in most of my CDH decks because it is a bad card as far as card quality goes. But if you're in blue and black in your deck, chances are you should be running this in CDH, but you shouldn't have it in anything below a bracket 4, just to reiterate. That makes you a dickhead. What are your thoughts?
I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach. While I overall agree, I think there's some nuance to that conversation. Uh, let's get it in the correct context. So, Thassa's Oracle and CDH, right? Looking at it from that perspective, it's like, yes, we were looking at it being abused with Demonic Consultation or Tainted Pact. Or some
And Hermit Druid, historically speaking.
Yeah, some sort of effect to kind of combo off quickly. Now, I will say from a winning quickly perspective, this is just like let's get another game in. And some people may be like, we had a hard fought game, and then somebody's like, Thus is Oracle Decon in their casual game, right? But if this is not being ran with a strategy to take advantage of it in the lower bracket, I don't think it's really that strong, right? Sure, there might be some niche cases where it comes up, but I think the real problem is when you see a player playing this with the intent to just decon or tainted pact or some other quick mill strategy. If you're slowly milling, maybe even that's more acceptable. But if you're trying to like abuse the card, I think that's where we really come into a problem with the lower brackets. Now, do you think CDH players are salty about this card?
No,
No.
absolutely not. This is the reason why I think CDH players like Thoracle or Thassa's Oracle is because it makes our convoluted loops, which there are many of. Um, we consider Underworld Breach loops to be one of the cleanest ways and most efficient ways to win the game. This gives us an endpoint to just cleanly end the game through something like the One Ring. That said, it's just a way to end it. CDH is usually about the journey to get to that end, not necessarily the end of the game. I don't know if you would agree with that sentiment or not.
Yes.
So, with those 10 cards out of the way, um, are there any cards that are not on this list that make you salty?
Oh, yeah. I, I think it's all like contextual, right? And I actually have a card, and I think something that I've played against in the past, but it's also looking at the power levels. You know, I had a precon, the Bant Enchantress one, and you look at cards like Aura Shards or Land Destruction then, especially when your ramp is on your lands. A little bit. But Aura Shards is just a mean card. And there's different ways to take advantage of it. Is there a card that turns everybody's permanents into enchantments? I forget, or if it's just yours. But Aura Shards is a card I am like it's a good card. And there are situations where it's like not as potent. I think it's just more relevant when we look at the strategy that you are playing. And then the other one actually, so Aura Shards, I would say more from a casual mindset is where I'm not a fan of the card. Now, a card I am not a fan of, if we really want to apply the salt to a higher level, and CDH is Smothering Tithe. It's a good card. It's a great card. It's a card that lets you do a lot of stuff, and it's a pain in the butt card. Smothering Tithe is, yeah.
I understand that sentiment. I think that Smothering Tithe is a completely busted card. It is not a card that makes me salty. I understand why it would make people salty because there are specific loops that are probably very, very hard to break out of involving Kinnan, Smothering Tithe, and Fairy Mastermind um, that are borderline problematic with how oppressive they can be. That said, I don't think that Smothering Tithe is actually a problem in the way that I think the Cabbage Merchant is going to be, because that requires so much setup. Um, you don't have to spend too much brain power figuring out what card makes me the most salty, though. It is Orcish Bowmaster. Yeah, it's OBM. That card has completely destroyed our format of choice. It's invalidated an entire archetype. CDH used to be a rock, paper, scissors of stacks beats turbo, turbo beats mid range, mid range beats stacks. And for stacks, stacks relies pretty heavily on hate bears. Hate bears are essentially creatures that have a stacks effect built into them. OBM, once it was printed, does not read punish the player that is drawing cards. It reads kill the stacks piece you don't want on the board. It reads punish the player who is playing green and kill their dorks. It is not a balanced card that like just punishes card draw. It punishes a entire pod, and not necessarily in a way that is healthy. I don't think that it really bums me out that that is not a card that seems to be getting any attention from the commander committee, because I would very, very much like that out of our game.
So the question with Orcish Bowmaster is it a problem in casual? I don't think it's as big as a problem in casual. Look at like there might be a good portion of card draw, but the type of recursive or cloning effects, they may not be as prominent. And I know there may be some people like they are prominent, they are prominent. It's true, they could be prominent, but I think the amount of Ristic studies in play or Mystic Remoras or some other effect are a little more prominent in CDH, and I think it's more of a problem there. And it's a Lord of the Rings card. You know, if they do any more stuff with that, they can print it more. I just, unfortunately, I don't think we're gonna see it go away. And yeah, it's also creates situations where Orcish Bowmasters team up with each other because they're like, look, let me stay, I'll let you stay, and we'll team up on the other players.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And for a long time, I was trying to tech against it, playing cards that would give all of my creatures ward or would remove the ability from a creature. Eventually, I just ended up playing a bunch of clones so that I could clone somebody's OBM, kill theirs, kill their board, and then kill my clone of OBM before somebody else could do the same thing and copy it. That's not a great play pattern. It's not one that I'm super happy about. I don't want to have to run 4 to 5 clones in my deck just to deal with a card that is not. It's just not fun.
No, I think they made that card very strong. And whether it was designed to sell, make some money, I don't know. But it's definitely a frustrating card, but I think we just unfortunately have to adapt to playing around it.
I think that was some genuine salt from both of us there.
I want I want it gone as well. I think I would prefer that card gone that card being gone over Ristic Study, in all honesty.
Oh, heartbeat. Not even close. I think Ristic Study makes card or decks viable that wouldn't be viable otherwise because they don't have any inherent card draw. I don't think Bowmaster actually adds anything to the CDH meta or to Magic the Gathering as a whole. Maybe to Nekasar, but I don't care about that deck. That's 1 out of 1,000. Um,
I don't, there is a question here, and I think a lot of people spoke on it. But I think you touched on a relevant point when you said Ristic Study makes some decks viable. There was another card that got banned that made decks viable.
okay, so that's the road we're going down today? Okay. Uh,
Do you think that made people salty and deserve this?
so Titus, in my office, I have a little plaque where I have my framed Jeweled Lotus, Mana Crypt, Dockside, and Nadu. It is a day of mourning, or it was a day of mourning when we got to the 1 year anniversary of the bans. I don't care that Dockside was banned. I think it's made the game a bit more interesting since it was. It hurt when it happened. I wasn't excited about it, but I do think the meta has become more interesting since Dockside was banned. I miss Mana Crypt out of that list the most of things I think could come back. I want Nadu. That's never happening. But I think Mana Crypt is the card that I'd really, really love to have back in the format. Jeweled Lotus is cool. Don't get me wrong. Be awesome, but Mana Crypt is the one for me. I love that just 2 bursts of mana that can also kill someone. Do you remember how exciting and fun it was for somebody to have 3 life left and Mana Crypt out and to have to flip to see if they could win or just die? Good games.
Yes, I think we've all possibly have been in that position. Um, that card is a very good card. Now, I think the one that would deserve to come back is Jeweled Lotus is the one I would hard argue for. And the one that I was referring to is Dockside. But I do agree that Dockside being gone, I think that's a good thing for CDH. Now, my main question would come to casual. And people said it was a problem. Like in CDH, we know it's a problem. Clone the Dockside, go for the Dockside so I can try to go for a win. I felt like my Docksides were not super good, and I always got into positions where I'm like, man, there's not enough treasures to be able to do a combo. But looking at like casual, right? And again, there's so many players that were not around to know what their experiences are with that card. But I do wonder if that card was really that bad in that type of environment with what type of cards were being played. Maybe it was more so players that were trying to take advantage of it in the same way that CDH players were. I could be
No,
wrong.
I mean, in the years I played casual, I can think of maybe 5, 10 times I ran into a dockside in casual in the wild. I used to travel for work a ton. One of the best parts of that is random Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night. I just go to an LGS in a different state, in a different town, and play with whoever the locals were. Most of the time it was casual, so considering that I've played all over our region of the country in a bunch of different places, I would say that I never really ran into dockside and casual just after a pregame conversation. So I don't know who since dockside died for, but I don't think it was casuals.
Either way, that card I think a lot of people can agree with. It's fine being gone. While it may have made some decks viable, there are other strategies, and I really do think that if we would like to see possibly, and maybe we're wrong, we can be wrong. But I think Orcish Bowmasters being gone, we might see some other stuff pop up, but I don't ever think we're gonna get that banned because, like a lot of other content creators have said, it's looking at CDH is commander, and uh, the rules committee would have to want to ban it for commander as a whole. And if it's not really being a problem, um,
We got Rebel, we got Lua. Come on, ladies, champion for us.
we'll see what happens. We're gonna get more cards. The state of the game can always change with how many sets WotC is releasing. Let's see what happens, right?
All right, Titus. We've kind of talked about the cards that are making us personally salty, some old friends that we miss. Do you have any final notes for today before we kind of wrap up?
So, these cards can make us salty and they can be kind of a pain to deal with. I would look at them as well as being a challenge. It's not always fun, but there is a way through it. And you can look at it as a Souls-like. So, those challenging video games like Dark Souls and Elden Ring, yeah, it's just a very, very difficult to beat boss that is less forgiving and punishes you very greatly. But there is a way through that challenge. And also remember that you can have a conversation with people as well. What you're playing, we have a bracket system. Have a conversation and just be like, I necessarily don't want to be in this game, and maybe we can look to play a different deck, or maybe I should play something that's stronger as well. What about you, Thomas?
I think that kind of my takeaway from today is one person's salt is sometimes other people's sugar. So while we're looking at some of these cards and thinking like, that's not so bad, we do have to be cognizant of the people around us and make sure that we are having the correct conversations in our pre-games to make sure that we're not just having games that we want to have because we're locking three other people into an experience with us. And nobody wants to be a hostage taker. If you do, maybe get some therapy. Other thought is thanks for bringing some old friends back to the dead for a little bit of conversation. I'm gonna go and look at my dockside tomorrow and maybe pour one out for the homie Nadu. Anyway, if you've stayed this long with us, please consider giving us a like, follow, subscribe, or comment, telling us how you found us, and be kind to each other. Be kind to yourself. It's just a game.